Hello viewers and welcome back in to Wayne's World. It's episode 2 of our F1 Manager 22 career mode. Now if you have missed out on episode 1, I recommend you going to check out the first episode at Bahrain. We have gone through the race. Spoiler alert, it was a double points finish, as you can see by the team standings there, and today we'll be bringing you the second race at Jeddah in Saudi Arabia. So if you are a fan of Formula 1 Manager content and you are new around here, consider hitting subscribe. We'll be going with this Mercedes career mode for a little bit longer, just to see how we can progress with this car. It's a little bit tricky, a lot more more confusing in terms of the car performance than I originally thought it would be. Obviously Mercedes have such a high standard when it comes to winning races, winning championships, and Lewis Hamilton, one of the greatest drivers of all time, is probably not going to sit around for much longer if we are just competing for the likes of 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th. So we're going to push on. Let's take a look at our emails here. First things first. Pete Bonington, good morning, Wayne. I've updated our circuits data around Bahrain, so all of our strategic information is up to date. On a separate note, our telemetry shows that the call-in of car 1 could be better compared to the grid. We should design a new car part to improve this attribute. We also noticed that braking performance of Lewis Hamilton could be improved. We could consider developing them in this area as well. Understandable. We are looking to probably do that as it stands at the minute, as we show you what we are working on the cars. Car part development, current projects, the underfloor, which will take 51 days and has 5 engineers on it. That's a big part. And the side pods has got 20 days on it, so that potentially could be here for Imola. I think, I don't think it will be there in time for Australia, but Imola, there's a good chance that we see our first update. Okay, Elliot, suspension manufactured. We started working on a manufacturing project prior to you joining the team. I'm delighted to inform you that the project is now complete. There's new suspension part waiting in the car warehouse. Looking forward to working with you this season. Okay, we head to cars and we head to the warehouse and look in the suspension section. There it is. There's our new suspension. Right, what does it give us? A little bit more top speed, a little bit more medium speed, so some improvements. Who was the lead car at Bahrain? Who finished ahead of who? I think it was Lewis Hamilton who finished ahead of George Russell. It was Lewis Hamilton, obviously just pipped George Russell with those fuel issues that we had at the end of the race. So what we'll do is we will give Lewis Hamilton that suspension and we can see just how it goes, and then what we'll do is we will manufacture another part as well. It only take 5 days, so I would just miss out if we do not a second car part, sorry. If we could rush it, if we rush it, actually what we can do is we'll be able to potentially get that second part in time for George Russell as well. So let's do that. We'll confirm that. It's a little bit of a potential risk, but we'll take the money to try and get this extra suspension for George Russell as well. Manufacturing has been complete on the new suspension, so we can add that to George Russell's car now as well, so we can install that on car number 2. And for now we'll just leave it as that. We can potentially manufacture 2 more. It will take a little bit of time, but at least we'll have some spares. And at that point, we don't need to go back to the previous one. So it will cost 100k. I don't think that's too much to have a couple of spare suspensions in case anything does go wrong. And we can use them for the first time this weekend in practice around the streets of Jeddah. Before starting practice at Jeddah, I decided to have a look at Max Verstappen's car in comparison to ours and just look at the difference in terms of everything. They've got a much better setup in terms of their acceleration. And you look at their low speed corners, they are much better than us as well. The only thing that we are remotely close to them is the medium speed corners, and that's just about. So we need to look to start making considerable gains on Red Bull, who I think probably have the best package to start off this season. Let's take a look at Ferrari, because obviously these are the guys that we want to be competing with. Yeah, Ferrari have the edge on everything as well, but that's not to be too much of a surprise to us. We need to look at the engine cooling as well. We are very, very far off with that. But hopefully some of the updates that we are working on in the background with the side pods can improve that. Right, incentive-wise for this one, we are looking at qualifying position, top 6. So we're going to reach Q3 and reach Q2. We should be fine to get through to both of them, at least with one car. Fastest lap, I'm really not sure we can commit to that. But we will commit to finishing position so that we can get some money just in case, and we will try to commit to finishing in 8th place. This package is not the best, and I've pretty much underestimated just how much work will potentially need to be done with this Mercedes car. And in terms of our hot streak targets, we just need to finish in the top 8 one more time, and we've already met that target. And if we finish in the top 8 2 more times, we'll be able to finish that incentive as well.
Formula One is back. Welcome to one of the fastest circuits on the calendar here at Jeddah. The Saudi Arabian Grand Prix is about to kick off, and the atmosphere here is electric. The Jeddah Street Circuit has one of the fastest average speeds, as well as the most corners of any track on the calendar. Good high-speed downforce is going to make life in the fast lane a little easier for drivers here this weekend. We might still be early in the season, but that doesn't mean we can sit back and relax. Everything is up for grabs, and nothing is certain at this stage. The weekend begins here.
Right, so first round of laps have been done, and Lewis Hamilton is not in a good place when it comes to his setup. We've gone the wrong direction completely as a base template. So what we're going to do with him is we're going to head more towards up. So oversteer will look to get to about there. Front wing angle about 8.5. Rear wing angle will go down to about 10.5. The anti-roll distribution will look to do that down to 6.4. The tire camber down as well to about 310, and the toe out will go a little bit lower as well to 0.4. The straights we need to consider, they're good. So our rear wing probably be, at the minute, its highest confidence was at 11.5. So if we do rear wing up to 12 or something like that, braking stability go down something like that. Traction we want closed in just a bit more. Front wing angle, we'll go over max with the front wing angle. And let's go with something like that for our next round of laps. And we'll see what we can do with Lewis Hamilton. Tires, we'll probably stick with the same tires because he's still running through a plan at the minute. And we will reduce the amount of laps. And we'll do another 10 lap stint on these soft tires with Lewis Hamilton. Right, George Russell, we're a little bit better than Lewis Hamilton in terms of the oversteer being great. So we're close to the optimal part of things there. But with the rest of the setup, it's all looking bad. So we want things to be a little bit better for George Russell while keeping the oversteer as is. So if we go up a little bit there, the tire camber probably to about 3.45. The anti-roll distribution, we can go towards 8 point. We'll go towards 7.3. Its highest was 6.4. The rear wing angle to 11. That isn't too far from the oversteer section, and the front wing we'll go with 7, and hopefully that might be a little bit better. George Russell was running on the mediums before, so we will keep those mediums on and continue his program as things stand. Run plan will reduce the amount of laps he needs to do to 20 and hopefully get our track acclimatization up. At the minute it's on 11%, so it will be good to see whether or not we can get that as close to 100 as possible. We'll confirm that, and it's reconfiguring. In terms of the times, Carlos Sainz currently leads the way, Charles Leclerc in 2nd place, Max Verstappen is in 3rd with Lewis Hamilton in 4th on his soft run, Sergio Perez is in 5th, and George Russell is in 6th. We're ahead of the Alfa Romeos, who caused us a bunch of problems last time out. Let's ride on board then with Max Verstappen, who is currently behind the Alfa Tauri. He's maybe on one of his faster laps, considering he is on the soft tyres. We need to close this gap to the Red Bulls and the Ferraris as quickly as possible, because look how quickly I'm sure he will dispatch an overtake on this Alfa Romeo. We were struggling behind Valtteri Bottas for that early part of the race for way too long, and we need to gap ourselves from the midfield pretty quickly whilst trying to make as many gains as possible on the higher ups. So hopefully once the setups have been done, we'll be a little bit closer with Hamilton, and we'll be a little bit closer with George Russell as well.
Balance check. Good stuff. That was very good. Copy.
So radio message there from George Russell. We're on the right track with his setup. So we're going to bring him in, and we're going to mess around with his setup just a little bit. We'll fast forward to get him in. Lewis Hamilton will head out on his long run now while we are in the pits. Let's pause it now. George Russell, let's take a look at his setup. So a great, a good, and 3 bads. I'm not too sure how he's happy with that. 53% in the confidence though, so that's a positive. Charles Leclerc finishes top of the time sheets once again, with Max Verstappen in 2nd, Lewis Hamilton, George Russell in 6th and 8th, which is pretty similar to our race pace after race 1. It doesn't seem as though that suspension has done too much for us.
And give us a balance check when you can.
Lewis Hamilton on the radio there giving us some good feedback on the setup. His times are getting a little bit faster, but we are heavily fueled up for this session. So 16th place at the minute, but towards the end we will give him some soft tyre running. What we're going to do is we are going to bring Lewis Hamilton in, have a look at the setup, try to make some changes, and we will make a look at what he wants improved. So much better for Lewis then. Optimal for the oversteer, 80% on the overall confidence, are great for cornering, great for traction, and good for straights and braking stability. So we want to try and get those at least to great. A couple more optimals as well where we can. Let's have a little play around with, we'll probably keep on 8.2 because that seems to be okay so far. So we'll do that for Lewis in terms of his racing plan, and we will reduce the run length now to 30 laps. He's still going to remain on the hard tyre. Long stint for Lewis. Let's try and get some setup feedback from him. Car parts knowledge is going well, and setup confidence is very well. So we're close to perfect. Let's just try and get there now with Lewis. And as for George Russell, he's doing his runs on the softs, currently sitting in 6th place. What we'll do is, while Lewis, we'll ride along with George Russell while Lewis is in the garage, and we'll attack on the tyres with George as well.
Great to use the tyres.
And we will deploy some ERS, see if we can get some pace out of the car. Let's ride on board with him for the remainder of the lap, see if we can maybe set a personal best time on the next lap, if not this one. He's doing some good sector times, green in sector 2 and 3 on the previous lap, so there is a little bit of pace in the car. So George Russell's in then, and he's optimal on the straights, which is fantastic. Great on the oversteer. Good for the rest of them. His only on 72%, whereas Lewis is on 80, so that's interesting. The end of P2 then, Lewis Hamilton finishes in 3rd, George Russell finishes in 6th, but some decent run in there. We're not too far off Charles Leclerc, but I'm sure that they have got the more pace up their sleeve. The big thing, George Russell got the most laps in that session.
Today, we wrap up with the 3rd and final session before moving on to qualifying. Drivers will need to perform with remarkable consistency if they're to secure a strong position on tomorrow's grid. It's not just about one moment of brilliance. No, they'll need to prove over the course of qualifying that they have what it takes to occupy those coveted places. You're going to want to join us for this, folks, so fasten your seatbelts.
Feedback there from Lewis Hamilton says the setup is optimal, so that's fantastic to see. We'll bring him in and we'll just see if there are any small changes that we need to make on his car. George Russell's currently out there on some soft tires, sitting in P3 after his first clean lap. Lewis Hamilton doing some medium running. That's not too bad for him. There we have it then with Lewis Hamilton, 98% on the confidence setup, almost there perfect wise. Braking stability being great, that could be an optimal. I don't know if there's anything we're able to really do there to change that too much. Maybe just a little bit on the toe out potentially. Let's do that, or we could go the other way. The previous best was 10, so do we go up one or do we go down one? Either way, we do have enough. I reckon we've got enough there to get an optimal, so we'll go down one for now. Russell, 3 optimals and a great, so fantastic. 96% on the driver confidence. This one was really tricky. I found it very, very difficult to get the correct setup there for George. Good stuff. We'll be able to make a little bit of an adjustment. If it's cornering and braking stability, then we're looking at probably the toe out. So with George, we're going to go up 2, whereas Lewis wanted it down all the way to the bottom. Is on the final flying lap of this session, and I have to say, practice so far, even though it's only the second race of the season, it's been a lot better. I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed trying to get used to the setups. I've enjoyed trying to make sure that our drivers are in the right windows and everything is working for them. George Russell has been brilliant, 90% on the track acclimatization, which is absolutely fantastic. We just need to make sure for George now his setup is optimal for the race. Lewis Hamilton, he's not really had the pace. If anyone this weekend is going to get us a good result, I think it might be George, but again, like last time out, Lewis Hamilton never gives up, and we're still on the end of this flying lap and he's gone purple middle sector. Let's see here whether or not we can change that narrative. I thought that George Russell was impressive. Lewis Hamilton on his final flying lap could pull something out of the bag. But again, practice doesn't really mean much in comparison to the race. I'm sure that the Ferraris are really holding something back in terms of the Red Bulls as well. I'm sure they're doing something in the background. But Mercedes cross the line. Lewis Hamilton, P1, 0.2 of a second ahead of Max Verstappen. I hope that that's a good sign for qualifying, but I don't think it is. Let's bring both drivers back to the garage, a P1 and a P3 to end practice session 3. Setup wise then, Lewis, we managed to get the braking stability to optimal. So we must have surely 100%, but no, it's still 99% on the driver confidence. We didn't get that final cornering boost. We could have had our first 100% setup, and that would have been fantastic to see. And then on the other side of the garage, looking at George Russell, his car setup is currently, it was at 3 optimals and a great. We managed to get the traction to an optimal as well. He's currently at 96% on the confidence. So that should be very, very good signs heading into qualifying.
It's green light.
Right, here we go then, as George Russell's engineer there tells us it is green light. Here we go. Comes to the start finish straight that crosses the line, and he is in P2 with a solid time there, ahead of the Alfa Romeos. That's the main thing. George Russell though, he may need to go again. He's on his way back to the garage now, but he may need to do a second run in Q1. We are currently sitting in P2 and in P11 with George Russell. I do think George Russell's going to have to go again, but I am concerned about the tyre usage. We are going to slap on a new set of soft tyres for George Russell because his time is not looking very competitive. I think Lewis Hamilton is safe. If we look out on the circuit now, the Red Bulls are both out, but they've not gone for their runs yet. Verstappen and Perez, they're both on their flying runs now. George Russell down in 11th. If you consider both of the Red Bulls will be faster than him, that will be him down to 13th. Then you're hoping that the likes of Gasly, Norris, they don't improve. So we do have to send George Russell back out. And while the circuit is quiet, we will do that with George Russell. He's exiting the pit lane now, coming towards the end of the lap with George Russell then. And it seems as though we are going to improve our time. Currently down in 14th, so it's a good thing we did go out for the second run. Otherwise, we would have been out in Q1. That would have been a incredible embarrassment for the Mercedes team as George Russell comes to the start-finish straight. He's gone green in the first 2 sectors. And now at the end of the lap, he has finished in P5. Eliminated then in Q1 are the 2 Aston Martins, the 2 Williams and Mick Schumacher in the Haas. Disappointing considering he wasn't too far off the time of Daniel Ricciardo. At the end of our qualifying run with George Russell then, a 1:30.4 on a used set of softs. Decent benchmark. It'll be interesting to see just how much time Lewis Hamilton has on him. At the end of that lap though, George Russell did encounter some traffic in the form of Fernando Alonso, or was it Esteban Ocon? It was one of the Alpines. He did encounter some traffic, but let's head on to the viewpoint of Lewis Hamilton as he crosses the line on his first run on the used set of soft, and he goes faster, 1:29.9, half a second quicker than George Russell, and that sounds about right given their weekends so far. So let's bring them both into the pits and see how their times stack up in comparison to some of our competitors. Hamilton's actually faster than Perez on the used softs. Right, as we get a little look then at the end of some of the Q3 runs, Esteban Ocon, he crosses the line, currently P3. Alonso goes faster than Sergio Perez. He's up to P2, so both of them should be safe. Sergio Perez crosses the line. He's P1. He's safe. Daniel Ricciardo in 7th place currently. He stays 7th. He's down to 8th now, as our boys are coming towards the end of their laps. I think we should be okay. George Russell, though, might be in trouble as Ocon, Gasly, Alonso, and now Bottas have jumped ahead of him. George Russell needs a good lap here. He's down to 9th. Zhou is below him, and Max Verstappen is still in the bottom part of qualifying. No, he's up to 3. George Russell is currently going out as things stand. Let's take a look at George Russell's times. How is he going? He's on a personal best. He crosses the line and he is... oh, he's just got through. He knocks Esteban Ocon out of qualifying. We've just managed to get through by the skin of our teeth, as George Russell was in 11th place until that lap. He's now down in 7th, but we managed to get through in Q2. It's a good thing we went for that extra run. Right, both of our drivers are on their out laps then, and we've not had the cleanest of runs so far in Q3. Lewis Hamilton locked up and made a mistake and is currently down in P9, and George Russell on a set of used soft tires, I apologize, they're currently down in P8. But looking at the track, we are in some decent positioning. George Russell is ahead of the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz, and Lewis Hamilton is ahead of Pierre Gasly, who I'm expecting to be faster than, but behind the 2 Red Bulls, who I anticipate will be able to create a little bit of a distance. We need both of our drivers to improve. Lewis Hamilton is currently down in P9, George Russell down in P8. We need to hopefully jump Valtteri Bottas. We need to definitely be ahead of Zhou Guanyu and also Pierre Gasly if we can. Let's follow Lewis Hamilton then, as he's on his last flying lap of qualifying. Let's see how he can do, watching his sector times in the process. We need them to at least be personal bests here. We're not going to get purples. I'm not anticipating us to be challenging yet for pole position. That needs to be something we consider further down the line, but we need to get this Mercedes as high up as possible, because we're currently 3rd in the Constructors' Championship, and I don't want the board to be angered with me at this early stage in the season, as Lewis Hamilton sets a personal best first sector going green, and that is a positive. At least means that he'll be setting on a better time than this current time he's got, leaving him in 9th place down the road. Let's check on George Russell, how he's done in the first sector. Another personal best ahead of the Ferrari. Hopefully there's not an issue there, because I'm sure that Ferrari is probably going to look to get past George Russell, as Lewis Hamilton has a poor middle sector. I'm not sure what's happened there. It is not a personal best for Lewis Hamilton. We need him to improve. We need him to be in front of the likes of Valtteri Bottas, Fernando Alonso, I don't think, has come out. Lewis Hamilton then, as he goes around the final corner, sprinting to the start-finish line. Where will he finish? Will he be ahead of Valtteri Bottas? Yes, he just qualifies ahead of Valtteri Bottas. And now on to George Russell. He's heading towards the start-finish straight. Where will he finish? George Russell crosses the line and is P7. P7, Valtteri Bottas once again splits the two Mercedes as Charles Leclerc takes pole position. He doesn't even need to finish his final lap. He is ahead of Max Verstappen on the front row of the grid. Max Verstappen wasn't able to keep up the consistency of practice, and Charles Leclerc is on pole. But for the Mercedes boys, we're currently in a battle with this Alfa Romeo. Our former driver Valtteri Bottas is proving to be a little bit of a pain for us, splitting the two Mercedes again. George Russell with another poor qualifying, but it's so close there between all of them. Look at the gap between Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas, 1/10 of a second, not even that. And that's just a huge indication of where the struggles of this Mercedes are. We do not have the power at all at the minute, and we need to get speed fast.
We saw a reasonable push from Mercedes in qualifying, and they'll have plenty of opportunities here to achieve a great result. This weekend, Red Bull displayed promise during qualifying. Now they need to capitalize on their grid position and get a good race under their belts. We've been having lovely clear weather, although there are a few clouds lurking. Hopefully they'll stay in check for the duration of the race.
Well, this is certainly going to be a challenging but no doubt exciting race here in Jeddah.
Right, strategy-wise then, it's a little bit tricky to know what's best to do, because the pace of the Alfa Romeo and Valtteri Bottas is probably going to give us trouble all race long. But what I'm thinking of doing with Lewis Hamilton is starting with the conventional medium, going on to hard to finish the race. That will probably give us the best opportunity of staying ahead of Bottas on the road, because I'm imagining most, if not everyone on the grid, will start with this strategy. In terms of pits, we could maybe make the mediums last just a couple laps longer if we want to. We were doing 20 or so laps in practice on the medium, so we'll try for that, or we'll try to make it work. We'll have a look on the undercut. Right now we'll go for 20 and we'll keep that as is for Lewis Hamilton. For George Russell, however, I think we're going to go on to the alternative strategy. We're going to go for plan B with George Russell. We're going to start on the hards, because I think we should have enough pace to stay ahead of the likes of Fernando Alonso, the likes of Esteban Ocon, Zhou Guanyu. I think even if we start on the hards, we should be a net P7 with George Russell regardless of the outcome. But at least at the end of the race, it will give us a little bit of time to try and sprint with these medium tires. And what we'll do is we'll try to stretch out the hard tires as much as we can. We'll go to lap 34 or 35 potentially. We'll go with that, and at the end we might see George Russell put in a number of quick lap times on the fresher medium tires. We're aiming for P5 and 6 unless there are incidents up the road with the leaders. But let's start this Saudi Arabian Grand Prix and let's hope for the best.
Mostly clear, tonight's race shouldn't hold any unpleasant surprises. And here we've got Lewis Hamilton. They're in the front half of the pack, so there's plenty of potential for them. We've got the other Mercedes here, not as close to the front as they might have wished for, but we know the race order can change a lot during those first few corners. The teams are ready to go. We're now moments away from this, the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. It's lights out and away we go.
And we are off, and hopefully we can stay ahead of Valtteri Bottas. George Russell's obviously going to have a poor start on the harder tyres, we need to go pretty aggressive with George Russell first off. So we are going to deploy some ERS to try and stay ahead of the Alpine at least, and maybe try to jump Valtteri Bottas where we can. But we have been overtaken by Fernando Alonso off the start. So we'll put that back down to neutral. We'll stay aggressive on the tyres for now. And going over to Lewis Hamilton, he has managed to escape Valtteri Bottas for now. So hopefully it will stay like that for the remainder of this first lap. We need to create a bit of a gap, because once the DRS opens, we know just how powerful it can be, and Valtteri Bottas is able to make a few overtakes on Lewis Hamilton at Bahrain in the last race. So we don't want that to be happening now. Coming down the start-finish straight, then we are going to deploy some overtake mode for George Russell. We have noticed, looking at the tyre choices, Valtteri Bottas has also started on the hard compound of tyre as Carlos Sainz sets the fastest lap of the race. Can George Russell make it in to turn one ahead of Valtteri Bottas? No, but he does get the position back from Fernando Alonso, squeezes him out. It's very brave there from George Russell. As I reduce the menu, let's go back onto neutral and settle in for a decent race now. Hopefully we can get past Valtteri Bottas once the DRS is open. Lewis Hamilton, I'm expecting to run away from this train. Let's have a look again at the overtake. They're side by side through turn one and again through turn two. And George Russell is just very brave and sticks to the racing line and keeps it ahead of Fernando Alonso. Right, lap 3, and the DRS has been activated, and Fernando Alonso is on the faster compound of tyre here, so we need to watch out for him, but we are still sitting behind Valtteri Bottas. Looking at the times then, ahead of us, Valtteri Bottas is in DRS range of Lewis Hamilton. So what we're going to do with Lewis is we are going to push just a little bit. We're going to try to get out of DRS range, away from Valtteri Bottas. He's having a quiet race. I don't think we're going to really be challenging the likes of Perez up ahead with Lewis Hamilton. But it will be our battle here with Valtteri Bottas. We want to make sure we get out of that DRS range as quickly as possible. And we need to get over a second ahead of him, ahead of the detection point. And I think we've just about done that. We will go back down on neutral after we've used some battery with Lewis. We've got out of DRS range, so we should be okay. Whereas George Russell is now primed for an overtake on Valtteri Bottas. We can use a little bit of overtake mode. Not just yet. We'll wait until the final straight once the DRS is open again. Out in front, Charles Leclerc is currently leading ahead of Max Verstappen, but there is an overtake here pending by Max Verstappen down the inside. Let's move the menu for you as they're going side by side, and Max Verstappen squeezed out, and that's given an opportunity here for Carlos Sainz. Will he get the move done on Max Verstappen for the second position on the track? Carlos Sainz is the fastest man on the road right now with the fastest lap of the race. He's just about not managed to do it. That is going to be a very, very tricky race all throughout, as George Russell has made it past Valtteri Bottas, and that is a net positive. Let's take a look at the replay as we were watching the race leaders. George Russell with the DRS open down the start finish straight, able to overtake Valtteri Bottas, who then has to aggressively defend on Fernando Alonso. A little bit too aggressive there, but now hopefully we can hold up the people behind and we can start running away with it once we start conserving our tyres with George. George Russell is defending for his life here as we have both Fernando Alonso and Valtteri Bottas. We've set the ERS to defend. We're now going back onto neutral. We're not going to have that much battery left. Lewis Hamilton is checked out ahead of them. He's got a gap of about 2 seconds because George Russell has been doing a very, very good job of holding these guys up. Let's deploy some ERS again as we go down the start-finish straight. The DRS for both Alonso and Valtteri Bottas is open once again, and we do very well there to not lose a position. We can push a little bit with the fuel, and we'll start to think about the tyres in a little bit, because our race is now definitely going to be with Bottas now that they are both on the harder compound of tyre. Hopefully, Fernando Alonso can start taking some time off of Valtteri Bottas, which maybe mean we can get out of DRS range. But until then, it will be a little bit tricky. Valtteri Bottas then around the inside of George Russell in that bendy part of the circuit at high speed. It's a beautiful move by Valtteri Bottas, and we've now told George Russell to attack because we do want him to stay in front of Valtteri Bottas. We don't want him to be swallowed up by the likes of Alonso behind either, who has just made the overtake on him. George Russell, we're going to deploy some ERS on overtake mode. Let's push that battery as fast as we can. The DRS is not open for George Russell. We're going to be swallowed up here by the Haas and by potentially the AlphaTauri as well. There's a 4-way, 5-way scrap for P6, and George Russell is in the middle of it. He's currently in P8. He's now in P9 behind Magnussen. We need to neutralize the battery now as we've lost a couple of places. That's a poor lap for us. Lewis Hamilton, he's doing his thing in 5th, but most of our job now is going to be fighting back positions on Magnussen and Bottas, who is on the same strategies as us. George Russell, can he get back down the inside of Kevin Magnussen at the first time of asking? It's a brilliant move. They're going side by side, and he does fantastically well to get ahead of Magnussen once again. And down the next DRS part of the circuit, he doesn't have DRS, does he? We'll see. We're going to give him a little bit of battery to overtake as he's now up into P8. There's battles all over the place here from 6th downwards as George Russell is now trying to close the gap on Fernando Alonso. We don't want to lose Valtteri Bottas. Our fight with George Russell now is for P6. We've got an inter-team battle here as Max Verstappen in 4th place is now closing the gap on Sergio Perez in 3rd, and Carlos Sainz has an opportunity for the race lead here. Can he get the race lead into turn 1 on Charles Leclerc? Carlos Sainz is going for it on his teammate, kind of cuts the corner there, just about makes it, and doesn't take the lead. It is now 3 wide basically through turn 1. Sergio Perez has managed to get involved in this. This is a brilliant scrap for the race lead. We don't have that sort of luxury yet, as George Russell is now defending from Pierre Gasly behind, who's managed to get past Kevin Magnussen. Lewis Hamilton, he's having a boring race all by himself, but hopefully we can stretch the tyres, and then at the end, he'll have a little bit more of a fresh set to try and attack. Hopefully, if there's maybe a safety car or an incident or two down the road. But our focus is on George Russell. He's got quite a lot of fuel left, so we're trying to get him to push. We're also now going to deploy some battery to try and get this move done on Valtteri Bottas. Are we able to do it? Let's take a look. Once we have the DRS open, we will also hit the overtake mode for him. See if we can get 2 into 1 down the start-finish straight. Let's see what George Russell's capable of. These two are scrapping. It's been 9 laps of almighty battling from Valtteri Bottas and Fernando Alonso. Valtteri Bottas goes down the inside of Alonso, makes the corner. George Russell's there to hopefully pick up the scraps, which remains to be seen. DRS is open. Let's deploy some battery here. See if we can get Fernando Alonso now and then Valtteri Bottas down the start-finish straight. We're not able to just yet, but now down the start-finish straight as we come around the final corner, we've gone overtake mode. We're using all of the battery to try and make this pass stick. It's all ended. We now have to harvest some, so I don't think we're actually going to do it. But can we get past Valtteri Bottas into turn 1? No, the mismanagement of the battery there holding us back.
So charge your pack, keep the delta negative.
Out in front with Carlos Sainz in the lead. He is currently leading by 0.1 of a second to Sergio Perez. This battle for the lead is incredible. Will Sergio Perez make this move stick? Look how close the 4 of these drivers are on the racetrack. We need Mercedes involved in this race as Sergio Perez is going to look down the inside of Carlos Sainz, makes it stick. Charles Leclerc, he gets past Carlos Sainz as well, and does Max Verstappen even follow him through? Yes, he does. But now they're side by side through turn 2. Who will be the man brave enough to make this move stick? It looks like it is Max Verstappen, and Carlos Sainz in the space of 3 corners has gone from 1st to 4th. Lewis Hamilton's in 5th. just driving the most boring race in the history of races. As long as we don't have any issues or any mechanical problems, we should be fine with Lewis Hamilton. We're probably going to bring him in soon enough. His pit window is open, so we'll bring him in with the leaders, I imagine. And George Russell on the other side of the garage currently sits in P8. And that battle with Valtteri Bottas is probably going to go on for the remainder of this race. Hamilton sets the fastest lap of the race as he now comes in to the pits. We're going to bring him in for some hard tyres just to confirm that.
So box.
We can take a look now. Now let's look at this. Here's George Russell.
As Lewis Hamilton was setting the fastest lap of the race, George Russell overtakes Fernando Alonso, and now he's behind Valtteri Bottas, who has to brake aggressively. What happened there? One of the Ferraris was coming out of the pits. Coming out. Who did we come out ahead of? It's Carlos Sainz, who has lost out there. Sergio Perez managed to get out ahead of the traffic, but Carlos Sainz is now sitting behind Fernando Alonso. He had to wait for the likes of Bottas, Russell and Alonso to go through. So Carlos Sainz there is the big loser. Charles Leclerc is now 2 seconds behind Max Verstappen. Max Verstappen was sitting in P4. Now all of a sudden he's in the lead of this race and out of danger of DRS, which is important around here. Lewis Hamilton currently sitting in P3, coming in to the pits. Let's have a look at Lewis Hamilton's stop here. He pits in for the hard compound of tyre. It is a smooth stop, 3.0 seconds. Have a look at George Russell in the meantime. Does he get ahead of Lewis Hamilton? He does, as Fernando Alonso also pits. George Russell managed to get past the Alfa Romeo of Valtteri Bottas down start finish straight using the DRS. The Ferrari of Carlos Sainz is still behind us. I believe that's Carlos Sainz. He's still behind us, so his race has been heavily compromised. Lewis Hamilton has come out in P10 and he is behind Esteban Ocon, who is yet to pit. So that's the strategy done for Lewis Hamilton. He'll get a little bit of an excitement here as he maybe tries to overtake Esteban Ocon. But apart from that, it's P5 unless something happens for Lewis. Lap 20 then, and the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz has managed to dispatch Valtteri Bottas. And it's now us in the way of the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz. It should be an easy move. As no, it's not. Carlos Sainz, he was in with a real shout at winning this race, but the pit stop strategists over at Ferrari, they strike again as they this time manage to ruin Carlos Sainz's race. He's been put into traffic as Lewis Hamilton does his one and only overtake of the race, going by Esteban Ocon on the start finish straight. An easy move, but remember Esteban Ocon has yet to pit. So that's as simple as it comes. George Russell holding up Carlos Sainz once again, really ruining Sainz's race. Carlos Sainz then with the DRS open makes it easy pass on George Russell. We don't really need to be fighting that. This isn't our race as Max Verstappen has come into the pits at the front of the track. Where is Charles Leclerc by comparison? He's in a battle with Sergio Perez. This battle included Carlos Sainz, who's just gone through fighting George Russell. Now, our worry with George Russell is just how far he is ahead of Valtteri Bottas. As at the lead of this race, where is Max Verstappen going to come out? Is he going to come out ahead of this battle? There's Max Verstappen. He's in first. Perez is in second. It's a Red Bull 1-2, and Carlos Sainz should feel rightly aggrieved because now he's over 4 seconds behind Charles Leclerc, and all of a sudden Lewis Hamilton is down to 10th. What's happened to him? How is Lewis Hamilton?
That's a good overtake from Alpine.
What has happened with Lewis Hamilton? Oh, he was overtaken again by Esteban Ocon. It's still not in sync. The likes of obviously George Russell, Valtteri Bottas, Pierre Gasly, those guys have yet to pit. So that's what completely threw me there with Lewis Hamilton. But that's fine. 10th place makes sense. We are now pushing the fuel with Lewis. We're getting him to save a little bit of his tyres for a little bit later on in the race, because obviously the likes of Leclerc, Perez, Verstappen, they've got fresher tyres. Sainz is on a similar strategy in terms of when they pitted. They both pitted on the same lap, even though they're way down the road. So we do want to make sure that we nurse Lewis Hamilton's tyres just a little bit, but we should be fine for P5. Lewis Hamilton now closing in on Pierre Gasly and Kevin Magnussen, who have yet to pit as well. They're doing the same strategy as George Russell. So he gets a little bit more entertainment. He had his little battle with Esteban Ocon behind, who is still sort of thereabouts, but his tyres have dropped off a little bit. Can we make a couple of clean overtakes with Lewis, with the DRS, fresher tyres down the start-finish straight? It should be pretty easy to get past Pierre Gasly, who doesn't have the DRS, but can we make a two-way overtake in the same straight? No, we can't, but we do manage to get past Pierre Gasly, as George Russell is still going toe-to-toe with Valtteri Bottas. They are trading places all race long. I have no idea when we're going to be able to get rid of Valtteri Bottas from our tail. I think we're going to have to go maybe one lap longer than him and hope that we can put an almighty in-lap in, as Lewis Hamilton gets past Pierre Gasly and is now looking to get past Kevin Magnussen as well, as we see that move again down the start-finish straight. DRS, it's an easy overtake. It would have been nice if we could have got both of them. Does Esteban Ocon follow through on Pierre Gasly as well? No, he doesn't. But that should now be Lewis Hamilton clear of the back markers and in a provisional P5 once George Russell and Valtteri Bottas pit in. Can Lewis get this overtake done now? Down this straight, Kevin Magnussen kind of moves out of the way. Is he letting us through? No, he's defending quite well. It's Lewis brave down the inside, and it's a beautiful move by Lewis Hamilton up to P7. But remember, the guys in front have yet to pit. Right, George Russell, we are going to blink first. We are coming into the pits for our box, and Valtteri Bottas follows us in. We've managed to make the move on Valtteri Bottas, and in the meantime, he's come in right behind us. Alfa Romeo have told him, whatever George Russell does, you do the same, and it's a quick stop for us. 3 seconds as well. Can we get out ahead of Valtteri Bottas? That's going to be the main thing here. It's a bit of a slow stop for the Alfa Romeo team. Is there a little bit of traffic there in the pit lane? It seems like it is. George Russell, we've managed to clear Valtteri Bottas in the pits. We're now ahead of Fernando Alonso by 2 seconds. Fernando Alonso has jumped Valtteri Bottas, and fantastic work by the Mercedes engineers there to get George Russell in and out cleanly. Valtteri Bottas, I'm not too sure what the issue was. Maybe a slow pit stop, but he's now down in P8. A little bit of a quiet race now for the Mercedes team, but out in front, Max Verstappen is right behind Charles Leclerc. They've both made their pit stops, and it's Max Verstappen going for the race lead round the final bend. He's going to have the DRS open. They've managed to completely drop the likes of Carlos Sainz and Sergio Perez. Sainz with a mega drive following his stint in traffic to get back up to P3, but that's not going to last very long as Sergio Perez makes it an easy pass with the DRS. Carlos Sainz in P4, but the fact that he managed to catch up despite being in so much traffic is a brilliant drive. And in the meantime, Charles Leclerc has the lead. Max Verstappen is behind him, ready to pounce. Final lap of the race then, and we've given George Russell every opportunity to try and close the gap on Lewis Hamilton. He's done just that. It was about 8 seconds, but now it's down to around 3.5. But on the final lap, it's obviously not something that I think he'll manage to do. Lewis Hamilton 32 seconds behind Carlos Sainz. The battle out in front, Carlos Sainz is still within DRS range of Sergio Perez. Is he going to get the final step on the podium? Sergio Perez 7 seconds behind Max Verstappen, but when you consider that all 4 of those guys were in with a chance of the race win at around about the halfway stage of this race, that is all Formula One fans have been asking for years. And Charles Leclerc seems to have managed his tyres just a little bit better. He seems to have managed the pace just a little bit better. And he is coming round the final set of turns to take another race win in his career. I think the first of the season for him. Carlos Sainz, I believe, won in Bahrain, if I remember correctly. With the Mercedes boys, George Russell 2.9 seconds now behind Lewis Hamilton. Is that Lewis down the road potentially? Could we see a last lap monster dive from George Russell on his teammate? I'm not too sure. We'll close the gap. Looking a bit further back, some of the guys that we competed with, Fernando Alonso, he is behind Valtteri Bottas, and there's an easy chance there that he might be able to get an overtake. Carlos Sainz, it's a sprint to the line for P3. Who's going to get it? It is just Sergio Perez. Charles Leclerc is today's winner. Crosses the line in first place.
Thoroughly deserved. A hugely talented driver and undoubtedly a worthy winner.
And in terms of Mercedes, Lewis Hamilton comes home in a comfortable 5th place. I don't think he would have had an easier drive in his life. And we need to give him and George Russell the opportunity to battle it out with these guys. Because some of the overtakes that George Russell done and some of the battling he had with Valtteri Bottas and with Fernando Alonso, it gives us good positive signs that we should be able to compete at the front if we give these guys the car. But Lewis Hamilton finishes 5th.
We have a checkered flag now.
Thank you so much for continuing to push this year. I'm so inspired by you guys.
Yeah, we can do this. But,
And George Russell in P6. Fernando Alonso can't get the overtake on Valtteri Bottas just. And that is P5 and P6 for the Mercedes boys. Good points. We stay 3rd in the Constructors' Championship, but we've got a lot of work to do before we can push on for race wins. And the driver standings then after race number 2 of the season. Charles Leclerc currently in 1st place. Carlos Sainz, who won last time out in Bahrain, in 2nd. Max Verstappen yet to get his 1st win of the season in 3rd. Sergio Perez in 4th. Lewis Hamilton in 5th. Valtteri Bottas in 6th. And George Russell in 7th. Constructors wise, Ferrari lead the way ahead of Red Bull and Mercedes, who are comfortably in 3rd. That's probably where we're going to be until our major upgrades come along. Money wise then, driver bonuses, we don't really need to worry about those too much, as Lewis Hamilton has a bonus for finishing 1st and George Russell has a bonus for finishing on the podium. But sponsor wise, we've had a very good weekend. Qualifying streak is done. Fastest lap we didn't do. Qualifying position we didn't manage to do either, so that's maybe a little bit disappointing for us. And finishing position, that was quite comfortable. Q3 and Q2 we will always manage to do, and although with George Russell it was a lot closer this time around. But that is going to be the end of episode 2. Next time out, we will be in Australia, a return to Albert Park. Thank you so much for watching. I do hope you are enjoying these episodes. If you are, feel free to hit that subscribe button down below. Hit like as well if you are enjoying the content. But in the meantime, take care, stay safe, and I'll see you for the next episode.